Welcome to the Pre-Chiro Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Glass, and today we're making a professional chiropractor connection out in Iowa. Dr. Josh Lawlor is here to give us some insights. Dr. Josh, can you get us started just by providing some context of where you were at in life when you decided you wanted to become a chiropractor, and what was that attracted you to this path?
Yeah, I had some serious chiropractic changes young in life. I was probably, 13, maybe 11 when my family started seeing a chiropractor regular. And interestingly, as the years went by, the guy that fixed my mom at a young age is the guy that trained me. His name was Troxell. So as I was going through high school, then into college, I would periodically go in for these chiropractic adjustments. Didn't really understand what was going on. And then in college, late in my college career, I was playing basketball. Had some serious issues with my spine to the point I couldn't stand up one day after practice and walk out on my own power. I'd have a teammate help me home. So that opened my eyes as a young guy. You know, you're 22 and Superman kind of deal, and your body said otherwise. It was shutting me down, protecting me, and I didn't know that's what it was doing. So I drugged myself into CT. Actually, someone else drugged me in there, and so he took an X-ray of me. He walked me through what was going on. He said, "Listen, you got to get serious to take care of your spine. It's the only one you're going to get." And at that time in my life, I was not serious. I was doing my thing in college and, playing basketball, having fun. But I had no choice. I had to do something. I had been doing physical therapy. I had been taking some over-the-counter pain medication. I even took a prescription course, been working with the trainer, all kinds of stuff. And at the end of the day, I had a chiropractic problem. And as I was undergoing care, that first year was rough. Second year was better. I had headache problems that went away. I had allergy or sinus type stuff that went away over the course of a couple of years, different changes in my health. And T said, "Hey, you got to think about going to chiropractic school." And I was thinking about a medical career at the time. And I was even considering physical therapy. I took the MCAT. I went through some research things, and, chiropractic was the answer. And I listened to a couple of people speak about what chiropractic was. And T started to educate me better because I was finally ready to listen what he was doing for me, what chiropractic did. And the rest is history. I've never looked back, 20 years in it now, and it's just fantastic. So started young, but I got serious in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons I brought you on the podcast is because I watched a presentation you did on behalf of the Gonstead. On behalf of Clarence Gonstead, you gave an outlook on his life and some insights into just how interesting and unique of a man he was. Can you maybe talk about the mentorship you received from Dr. Troxell and the lineage that you come from with Dr. Gonstead?
Yeah, there's a long discussion there. Quite the history. Dr. Troxell was an amazing person, and chiropractors are amazing people at large. You'll spend any time in any chiropractic office and you'll just feel an energy about what they're doing because they're helping people in a very organic way, the way chiropractic should be, the way healthcare should be. And he was one of Dr. Gonstead's very finest students. He was at the top of the echelon, I would say. When you think, I equate it to basketball, you think about the top players, who would you study? You'd talk about Michael Jordan, of course, Kobe Bryant, maybe Steph Curry in today's world, LeBron James, whoever your particular model is. He was in that list. Clarence Gonstead was. And of his students, Dr. Troxell was in that list. And the Gonstead lineage, what's unique about that in the chiropractic world was Clarence wasn't really looking to make a quote unquote technique for him. The students that I teach and the doctors we work with, we're not hell-bent for a lecture on being technicians or we do this because of this. We study Dr. Gonstead's ways because he got so very good at chiropractic. And the profession really came to him. And eventually he saw a need to help the profession. And so that's what really resonated with me the more I learned. And of course, the background and what was able to fix me where nothing else had really resonated strongly. So that's kind of a little bit of the background and the lineage there.
Yeah, can you kind of expand upon it? So just to keep giving you context of this project, we're really aiming to highlight the different communities in chiropractic, the different pathways that you can take. And I look to you as being one of the world's most authorities on chiropractic through the lens of Clarence Gonstead, the Troxell Intern program. Can you kind of just unpack what you're up to these days, what you've been up to in past years, and maybe just give an overview on the Gonstead system and just how people approach chiropractic practice in a Gonstead clinic?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So within the chiropractic family, which is worldwide, that all started right down the road from where I'm at, 20 minutes from here at Palmer College in Davenport, Iowa, 1895. Then this guy, Clarence Gonstead, come along, and he was raised at the foot of B.J. Palmer. He was steeped with the philosophy of chiropractic. So chiropractic is three parts: science, philosophy, and art. And in Clarence's days, what he saw a need for was that there was a huge philosophical foundation with the chiropractors, but there was not enough of a clinical scientific approach to what he thought was possible. And he developed a system of evaluating and studying the spine with 5 different components. One is getting a good history on the patient. One is visualization of the patient. We palpate the patient both statically and with motion. We run an instrument down the spine, something similar to this, thermography, and then we'll take an x-ray of the spine, full spine, AP, and lateral. And there's a combination of all those pieces of information that really let us hone in and figure out where exactly is it that we need to be in the spine. So that uniqueness in the Gonstead world is our big gift to the profession in our particular community. And if I had to give you one word and what that is, it's specificity. The more specific we can be with each patient, the better the patient does. So if I was going to check you, for example, I would assume when I go to check you that there is really one best way on this planet to adjust you. One best one. Not my way, not Clarence's way, not your way, but there's one best way for you as the patient. And it's our job as the chiropractor to do the best we can to figure that out. And the closer we can get to that perfect adjustment, the adjustment with that something extra, BJ Palmer would say, the better you'll do as a patient. And of course, that's what it's all about, getting our patients results, because you and everybody else out there, we've all got lives to live. We got families, we got, sports we want to do. We want to go travel, see the world. We want to be good chiropractors. And the better a patient functions and adapts in this world, the better they do those things. And the only proper vehicle for that is chiropractic care, because we're the only ones that understand that healing comes from above, down, inside out. And so Clarence really devised a system that was all encompassing, and a lot of fail checks, if you will. If one thing doesn't add up, then you look over here. And if that doesn't add up, you look over here. And pretty soon you start to understand, where does this person need to be adjusted and how? And then what's the best way to deliver that adjustment? So the communities that we work with, then Clarence's clinic is in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. To this day, it is still the largest chiropractic clinic in the world, privately owned. The waiting room seats 133 people. The average wait time at the end of Clarence's life to see him was 2 hours, average. That's a long time to wait for an adjustment. But the reason patients would wait that long was because just what I laid out. He knew how to figure out what is the best way to adjust these people, and they would receive an adjustment that would respond and last longer than if they were getting other less specific adjustments. And I'm not saying that in a boastful way, because I give adjustments that are not correct all the time. I hate to admit that, but that's the reality. That's what we as chiropractors go through. Everybody does. And so our effort is to continue that work and try best we can to train the chiropractors and chiropractic students. How do you hone in and really go, this is what's going to fix this patient? And when you do, the results are remarkable, unbelievable. Vertigo, neck pain, back pain, blood pressure, blood sugar, fast heart rate, lung problems, pneumonia problems. It's really remarkable, the things that respond better once a patient's properly adjusted. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts. And then from there, that clinic in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, I teach with a group called Gonstead Methodology Institute. There are a number of other seminars out there. I work with Gonstead Clinical Studies Society. I'm on that board, which is the research arm. And we're not only doing research for Gonstead chiropractic, we're doing the research we do affects all chiropractors. It protects the rights for x-ray utilization. It helps advance our understandings of things like instrumentation, what we're doing neurologically. And there's a number of other groups out there, not just the Gonstead people working in these areas. And together, the profession is stronger. And the Gonstead groups are an integral part of that whole discussion. So I'm very fortunate. I'm kind of in the middle hub, like you said, not by design. I just landed here, and it's a great place to be because all the people involved all around, literally around the world, are just phenomenal. So I can't begin to tell you the amount of good people in our profession, in particular in the Gonstead world. You know that.
If you were the captain of Team Gonstead and there was a prospective student that was wanting to join the team, what would be some of the initial steps that you had them take? Maybe some prompts or some resources that you can start to help them wrap their head around the path that they're going to go and take, and then maybe even some prompts to give them to test their competency or just proficiency as this could also be, in your mind, a chiropractic student or even a professional chiropractor. But how would you say somebody immerse themselves in studying Gonstead and beginning to really dedicate themselves to the study?
That is a fantastic question. I wish you'd have preempted me. I'd have had a few other books here ready to go. Let me grab one more. Number one, I would tell them to give me a call or send me an email. Lawlor at LawlorFamilyChiropractic.com. You can send that out. I will gladly host them. They could come spend a seminar weekend with us. We get undergraduate students regular. We teach 5 seminars a year. I don't get paid to teach. The only money I make is in my office helping people. We have one director that's paid and an assistant director that helps him. And we've got a crew of about 30 different Gonstead instructors that help with what we do. We go around to the various schools. We teach seminars called Crank It Up at low cost for the students. We're all about just helping chiropractors get better at what they do. So that'd be first thing. Number two, I'd pick up some books. And the first book I would tell you to read, there's one we have called Stevenson's Chiropractic Textbook. All right, you're familiar. And then this gentleman by the name of Rob Sinnott. You know Dr. Sinnott? Yep. He wrote one that's a little simpler, and it's the textbook of chiropractic philosophy in today's terminology. It's much more savvy. So this is the one they need to get. Number two, Ayn Rand, Philosophy, Who Needs It? Fantastic book. Our profession is a philosophy first and a science and art second. And that's really what separates us from medicine. You know, there's an outside in medical thought process of where health comes from. The last 3 years of COVID put that on full display. Absolute madness. And then there's inside out. And there's other, arenas in healthcare around the world that think that way. But nobody's really articulated it as well as the chiropractic profession. And so we have to understand where health comes from first and foremost to be able to understand how to help people get healthy. Then third, this is the other one they need. This is one of about 5 copies I've got down here. Gonstead Chiropractic Science and Art. And you start with chapter number 5. When we talk about the science, philosophy, and art of chiropractic, it's a 3-legged stool that we always talk about. Fred Bard said that the linchpin of that 3-legged stool, science, philosophy, and art, is the subluxation. And unfortunately, we have people in our profession that want to get rid of the word subluxation. They don't know how to find a subluxation. They don't think they exist. Oh my golly, come spend a day with me. I'll gladly show them to you all day long. And any prospective student, same thing. You have an open invitation. Come visit me. Tell me where you're at in the country or the world, and I will find you a good chiropractor and go spend an afternoon. That's the number one way to find your dream team. You just call me. I give you 2 or 3 names, and you go spend an afternoon with each one, and then I'll help you pick a school. Because once you start to see it, you understand it, and you start to observe it over time, especially when you get into it, there's nothing like it on the planet. We've got the best product in healthcare, second to none in the chiropractic adjustment. There's nothing better in the world to provide for another human being. They can't do it themselves. They can think well, they can eat well, they can move well, they can do all those things themselves with proper guidance, but they cannot remove a subluxation that's interfering with their brain communicating to their body. And that is such a wonderful thing to provide people. So those books, and then find a chiropractor in your area and go observe. Ask questions. You don't get a question answered, you email me.
I would love it if you can maybe give us some insights into your life as a practicing chiropractor, share some of the joys or the challenges, the struggles,
Yeah.
give as much juice as you can to create context for what your experience has been like.
Yeah, boy, I don't want to scare nobody away. The first thing I would tell you is, fulfilling as it is, anything in life is hard work. And I really see, for you students listening to this, I want you to listen to it no matter which field you go into. It's necessary. You will not find fulfillment in anything if you're not putting good quality work into it. And chiropractic's no exception, especially in the Gonstead work. But I will tell you, the more work you put into it, especially the Gonstead part of it, it never stops. Never stops. All the seminars that I've taught and I've attended, and my wonderful mentors, numerous mentors that I learned different things from, there is so much to learn in how to better help a patient be well. And that's the exciting part of it. So be ready to work. That's number one. I get up at 4:15 to 4:25 in the morning. I see my first patient usually 10 before 6. I start scheduling at 6. I don't get done till about 12:30, and I shut down for about an hour and a half. And about 10 to 2, I start seeing patients, and I usually finish at 7 at night. And that's a short day. Clarence Gonstead used to work till midnight, they said. He used to brag about never going to bed the same day he woke up. And so I got a long way to go to get there, but it's hard work, and it's dedication. So I don't want people going into our profession that don't want to do that. I guarantee you wouldn't be doing what you're doing if you didn't have a passion and willing to put the work in. This isn't easy stuff to provide and get it out to the proper people, but it's worth it. And so if you have a desire to help people and you want to put the time in, there's no better profession on the planet. To give you an idea, like when I get to the clinic in the morning, I'm usually the first one there. And a lot of times I'm the last one to leave, go through, turn the lights on. I've got an adjusting room here. I can kind of show you. Actually, I got an adjusting room in my basement. I don't know how much of this you can see. So like there's a big screen on the wall over there, and I'll turn that sideways, and that's where I view my x-rays. So this is an example. Okay, this is not a HIPAA problem. There's an example of what a full spine x-ray would look like. I've got these hanging up on each patient every time they come through. That's their roadmaps, like their fingerprint. Everybody's fingerprint's different. After I check them, I'll run that scope down their back. Here's a nervous scope. So I'll take this scope and I'll sit them in this chair right here, run the scope down their back, and I'm looking for different temperature differentials, giving me areas to look at. And then we got a number of tables. It's called a slot table. There's a knee chest table. And then against the wall, there's a pelvic bench table. So this room that you're looking at, that's what I'm in for 12 hours plus 14 hours. And I used to think I needed a window. And I remember asking Dr. Troxell, I'm like, hey, where's your window at? He's like, I don't need a window. I'm like, I need a window. But once you get rolling and the people are coming through and you're fixing and chatting with them and teaching them chiropractic principles, the day goes by. You get to lunch and then you're like, oh, hit it again. And then all of a sudden the sun's down, you go out, and it's dark when you come in, it's dark when you leave. So that's how a day will go for me. But in that, there's such a variety of different types of people coming through. Like I said, you got all kinds of different health problems that they're dealing with, emotional problems. It's amazing the number of thought type problems that we fix chiropractically. That affects them physiologically. And if we change their physiology with a specific adjustment, that changes how they think. So that's how a day would go. My work schedule, I do Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 6 to 6, which usually works out like 5:30 to 7. Tuesday, I do from 6 to noon. So 5:30 to usually I'm out of there by 1 o'clock. And then Thursday's my day off. I'll run in and see somebody, or also use this room for emergency cases. Same thing on Saturday. So that's kind of how my week goes. It's very nice. It's good for family. But you're going to be busy. You're going to be seeing a lot of people and got to put the hours in. So that aspect is just something you can modify to your life. I have a lot of colleagues do things different. Some people take big lunch breaks. Some people don't work Friday. There's a whole variety of ways you can handle your schedule. And this is the one that works good for me and my wife. We got 2 boys. I can jump out and see a ball game in the evening when they're playing sports and that kind of thing. I got an associate chiropractor, Dr. Brittany Cedar. She is just fantastic. Right across the hall. She practices just like I do. Some patients resonate more towards her than me, and vice versa. So we've got a real good balance that way. I have a CT that takes x-rays for me, preps patients. I got a few ladies out front that work the office, and my wife runs the office. She's my office manager. So what other questions you got along those lines? That help?
I love it. Yeah. So when you were giving a presentation on the Gonstead methodology at the Subluxation Summit a few years back, you rattled off about 100 different details that you can look at when analyzing for subluxation and trying to locate subluxation. And you don't have to give all 100 details, but can you kind of just talk about postural observations and static palpation, motion palpation, instrumentation? Give us a little bit more details into what the different specific skill sets are within those categories that students are going to need to go and learn, so that they can orient themselves or provide themselves a framework to really balance their training so that they're not focused on one thing and forgetting about other aspects that are really valuable when you're analyzing somebody?
Yep. That's a really important point. So often everybody's going to have a strength. And when you get into chiropractic, you're going to find what your strengths are. Some people are great palpators. Some people are real good with the instrument. Some people are real good technicians in terms of moving a bone. But if you're not moving the right bone and you're not moving in the right direction, you're not helping the person, even if you think you might be. And that's kind of a difficult concept to accept at the beginning. But as time goes, you start to get onto it. So I'll go through the parts and pieces. And like you said, there's a lot. There's so much. I got a number of books here that after you get through chapter 5 in the Gonstead chapters, then you start at the beginning and you read through it. Then read chapter 5 again and read it again. So for history, for example, we might have a patient that would show up and on their main complaint form, they may say they have low back pain with radiation down the right leg. Well, when they say they got radiation down the right leg, we want to know where's that at specifically. So we'll have them take their finger and point, and they may point at their gluteal muscle or their buttock and go right down the back of the leg and then stop at the knee. The next one might go past the knee down into the right lateral foot. Those things can come from a few different areas in the spine automatically. In my mind, I'm going, okay, this could be a fifth lumbar. This could be a sacrum. This could be an external ilium on that side. If it's going down past, it could be an external ilium on the opposite side, or it could actually be a neck problem causing pain in the leg. So it starts to clue me into an area to look. They may also mark on there that they are taking medication that deals with their heart. And when I do the consultation, I may dig a little deeper and find out they got a fast heart rate. And so they've been put on, or they skip beats. Now I'm starting to think into terms of what nerve system am I dealing with here? Am I dealing with a parasympathetic nerve system way at the top of the neck and then down in the pelvis, or something in the middle of the spine, sympathetic nerve system? The parasympathetic nerve system, if there's a subluxation up here, for example, on an atlas. I just had a case like this start this morning. She's got a menstrual cycle that just won't stop and runs too long. It's too heavy. So there's too much going on. That's a sign that the sympathetic subluxation or sympathetic nerve system is working. So the subluxation that we may find is in the parasympathetic spine. An opposite example might be someone with a thyroid, and the thyroid's too slow, sluggish thyroid. We see lots of those. That's an indication that the sympathetic nerve system's involved. So there I may be thinking base of the neck. That's number 1 on my list. That's the most common area that we'll find. It may be down in the adrenal glands, so like a lower dorsal thoracic spine, or could be related to a reproductive organ like the ovary or the testes for a man. So there's a number of different things that the history can point us to. Then we got visualization. So if someone comes in and they've got the fast heart rate, and I've checked them, I palpated, and then I see that the atlas is part of the problem and they're kicked up way on one side. Well, when I see this ear kicked up, that's either going to be an occiput on that side or a posteriorly rotated atlas on that side. It could be coming from something down lower kicking them over, but usually the head will right itself. So we have to differentiate, is this a foundational problem or is this coming from up here? And what Dr. Gonstead found was very often problems up here, you might have someone leaning way over and their head's kind of torqued like this, but it's because they're kicked off down in the middle back or even in the low back. And as you correct that foundation, everything starts to come on top. So as a rule, we're looking from the foundation up in terms of effect. Sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, though, you could have pain in the leg and it's actually coming up here. So we teach people to find the subluxation on the patient. And therein, we would start to run our scope. So we run the scope all the way down and we make our marks. We might mark an atlas, 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, L5. That might be where we find readings. Just because we find a reading there does not mean that we're going to adjust those. Those are areas that tell us the nerve tissue underneath that is controlling the sweat glands at the surface of the skin is having trouble. That's what's producing that reading. So now we've got a real specific area to go in and visualize and palpate. When we palpate down through the spine, and especially when we get under the spinous, when we go to start palpating, we're going to palpate globally through that area, and we're looking for swelling and edema. But then we're going to start to get more specific. And these spinous processes on the backside of the spine here is where that swelling sits down underneath. And you can see that the nerve right here correlates, the IVF, the disc, and the nerve correlate with that spinous. And so the swelling that we're going to palpate is going to be in the skin right above that spinous. And that's where we're going to feel a spongy edema, or sometimes what we call a pitting edema. It will feel like a bruised peach. If you take your finger and you dig right up in there, the patient will go, ooh, that's tender. And sometimes it'll actually be painful. You push in there and they're like, ooh, that's the bad one. They'll confirm what you just found. And once we find that static finding, then we go into motion palpation. So each vertebra sits and it tips one way and it tips the other way and it rotates and it rotates. Our job is to determine if it's subluxated here, then the proper adjustment is to push it like this to get it back on top of that intervertebral disc. So the motion palpation will tell us which direction we need to set that. The last part then is we go look at that x-ray. So after I've done all that work, and you can see on this x-ray here, let me see. So down low here, there's a BB. Let's see if I can do this right there. If that BB represents where my reading was at, I can know exactly which level I'm at on this particular case. And I can see which direction that this vertebra has misaligned. And we give them what we call listings. Here's the listing. And in this instance, this is a PRS-M. So when we go make an adjustive thrust, a low amplitude, high velocity thrust to make an adjustment, very specifically, I'm going to set that bone I to S, P to A. So I'm going to lift it and push it ahead. And in this instance, I'm going to set it from right to left. And then I'm going to turn it at the very end to close it, because this one actually got tipped like this. So when I set it, I got to turn it to level it out back on top of that disc. And that's what I was talking about, the specificity. The more precise we can be to make that correction, the better they respond. If this vertebra is sitting like this and I twist it more like this inadvertently, they're not going to do as well. So the better I can make the correction to get things leveled out the way they should be, the better the patient responds.
Love it. Love it. I really appreciate you taking the time to give us some depth to the framework that you look through. The all of the steps matter, right? It's not just um, at times in chiropractic school, I believe that students get a watered down version of Gonstead because not because of the instructor, but because there's so many other things that they're being exposed to that they don't get to hear the full picture. And I just really appreciate how you break down the whole framework, because I think it would bring a lot of value to chiropractic students to hear your message and be able to really start to go and explore for themselves ways that they can become better observers of how somebody is tilted, and thinking themselves what that might mean to the central nervous system, what that might mean to the spine. And the full spine A to P, the full spine lateral, is maybe something that people are unfamiliar with at first. Maybe they only see spot shots of the neck or the low back, and they've never been exposed to the full spine. Can you maybe just touch on why the full spine look is so important and valuable?
There's boy, I teach with one of my slides. What is his name? There's a medical doctor. I'm not going to guess at his name, but I can give you the quote. He basically says that looking at the spine in sections is a mistake, because he talks about how a neck problem can cause a low back symptom, and how a low back problem can cause a neck symptom. And there's video of BJ Palmer and Clarence Gonstead joking on stage. And BJ says something to the effect of, I can fix a sciatic pain by adjusting an atlas. And Clarence Gonstead looks over and goes, well, I can fix an atlas problem by fixing a fifth lumbar. And they both just erupt laughing, because they know they're both right. They totally get it. And so the whole is greater than the sum of its parts and pieces. That's what I want the prospective student to think about. What we've done so wrong in healthcare in general and in Western medicine is we've tried to break down and go, well, you got cholesterol problems, so we're going to give you a drug to take care of this cholesterol problem, and disregard everything else going on with the patient. Or they got a shoulder problem, and so they look at the shoulder and they disregard everything else going on with the shoulder. I can't tell you how many shoulder problems I fixed by fixing a hip. I fixed jaw problems by fixing a hip. I fixed migraine and headache problems by fixing a jaw. So you have to think in terms of the whole, and chiropractic has always preached that. And sometimes, and I hope I say this correctly, sometimes I think one of the things we get too concerned about, and I don't want to downplay the importance of it, but we get too concerned about getting in trouble from other people and what they think about how we're utilizing our x-ray as a chiropractor. Nonsense. Chiropractic first. You do your due diligence in the way that you best want to take care of somebody, and the way that is best to take care of them. And I can't tell you how many times I've been burned because I did not take a new x-ray on someone soon enough that gave me valuable information. And as soon as I switched the angle or potentially the bone I'm working on because of my evaluation on the x-ray, boom, they take off and get night and day better. And it's fast. It's not coincidence. It's extremely fast. So again, the more specific we can be, the better off we are. And the more complete we can be, the better off we are. If you get someone comes in and they're constipated and you think, well, maybe I got to fix their low back, and you never take time and you study the base of their neck where there's innervation to the thyroid gland, the primary gland that's probably going to cause a constipation issue, you're missing the boat. If you take someone that's got a heart problem and you think all you need to do is check the atlas and take a phosphor reading and start banging away at the atlas, but they've got a third thoracic that's turned, that's making that atlas compensate posteriorly on that side all the time, you're missing the boat. The whole enchilada works together. And so that's how we got to evaluate the patient, the whole person versus the part and piece. And so that's where the full spine x-ray really is paramount. And you got to do it proper. It takes a long time to master how to properly take the x-ray. And it really takes a long time to master how to analyze it and read it. So one thing you brought up earlier, you asked me about a dream team. You need a dream team in chiropractic. You need multiple dream teams in different arenas. But clinically, one of the great things about as you go through your study in school, the Gonstead work does get watered down to a degree. and it's a victim of circumstance because the school's got so much content they got to deliver. They got to get you through boards, and God bless our schools. I wouldn't want to deal with it. It's a lot. You got to have a degree first and foremost. But if you can exude the energy and the time and spend some time with different Gonstead groups or whatever particular niche you find yourself in, it's worth it, because as you go on in your professional career, I'm on a phone conference like this at least once a week with doctors and students. And so sometimes it's on my own bequest because I got questions on cases. I'm on email multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, either answering questions or asking questions. So develop those dream teams. You know, that's the beautiful thing about Mayo Clinic. You go up there, they got a team. We've got that in our profession because we got, you know, you just hop online and I send an x-ray, I give them a case history. Sometimes I'll take a video, a gait video. I didn't even talk about gait analysis today, but I'm walk down and back 2 or 3 times, send that, I'll run my scope, I'll record what I'm looking at on my scope and ship that out. And boom, if I can't figure it out, I got people that can. And that's the really neat thing. I've driven people all over the state, taking them to see other chiropractors. When T was around it, I just take them across the hall, you know? So does that help?
It really does. Can you mention, or can you maybe just unpack the idea of a primary subluxation versus a compensation, and that concept and how vital it is that students think with that level of awareness?
Yes. So 2 things. 1, chapter 5, get this book. If you don't have it and you'd like it, call me. I'll make sure we get you one. And then Rob's book here. So when they talk about majors and minors in the old textbooks, it's as true today as it was back then. It's just like I said, if I was going to check your spine, in my mind, I go, okay, first thing I'm going to say is if you do need to be adjusted today, there's a best way to do it. So I'm going to try to go about the process of figuring that out. And you can have what we call majors and minors. And the major subluxation or subluxations are the ones that are the most important, and if corrected, would have the most impact to that patient at large. Then you've got minor subluxations that don't necessarily need to be adjusted with the majors that day, but they're there. And eventually, as the majors get corrected and do better, the minors will show up. So for example, very often you might have a 5th lumbar problem in someone that's got a 2nd lumbar problem. The 5th lumbar is the major, very common bone we fix in chiropractic. And as you fix that 5th lumbar, all of a sudden the 5th lumbar is doing a whole lot better. The motion's better. The pressure in your scopes drop down. And guess what starts to show up a little bit more aggressively? 2nd lumbar. It now becomes the major. And now we need to go address that particular vertebra. A second scenario is you have a 5th lumbar that's subluxated. And because, let's do it this way. You have a right hip that is subluxated. And every time they walk, the right hip doesn't move and everything kicks left. The right hip doesn't move, everything kicks left. As the right hip doesn't move, the left upper back kicks open. Right hip stops, left upper back kicks open. So now you get all this upper left back pain. It's going up and down the left rib cage. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's got to be coming from those ribs or from the middle back. But it's a compensation because of the hip problem down below. So now this is a different issue. The subluxation, the primary subluxation is the hip, the sacroiliac joint. As you correct that sacroiliac joint, a compensation will self-correct. So as this starts moving better, this kicking so hard or it slows down kicking so hard this way. And now you get back into a normal gait pattern. The compensation calms down, heals itself, never have to adjust it. Subluxations have compensations to make up the difference. We see that in the neck all the time. We have a patient come in and they say, well, I just did a consult for an older gentleman the other day. He's nervous to come in. He's not sure what to do. They already gave him shots in his neck. And I palpated his neck. I just felt it a little bit, chatted with him. And the thing felt like a rock. I'm like, this is going to be a lot of work. But where he needs the work is not his neck. The neck's all degenerated from C3 down to C6. The discs are virtually gone. But his upper back is so hyperkyphotic that his neck's been working so hard for so many years, those joints wore out. They were compensating because he's had a middle back problem that never got addressed. And that's why it's so vital for us to get the chiropractic message out to patients and especially to prospective students. We don't have near enough chiropractors on this planet. It's just, we're way understaffed. There's so many people walking around out there that could be responding to chiropractic care that don't even know it's an option. They don't even know. I mean, I have a clue. So you have primary subluxations, and then you've got major subluxations and minor subluxations. And then you have a primary subluxation, or any subluxation for that matter, and the body has a compensation elsewhere. And that's covered in the Gonstead chapters.
Very powerful. As we wrap up here, can you maybe look to the future of Gonstead, sort of the Gonstead community, supporting students? You said that there's weekly calls, there's seminars happening all the time, there's obviously clubs within different college campuses that are practicing and studying Gonstead. Can you maybe look to the future of how the community could be made stronger, how it can really collaborate within itself to support students at its fullest potential?
So that's a great question. There's a number of organizations out there. The one that I teach with, I grew up in, is called Gonstead Methodology Institute. And we have a tremendous group of chiropractors. We do 2 seminars at our clinic and 3 seminars at the Gonstead clinic every year. So you can go to GonsteadMethodologyInstitute.com and look on their website for those. Within that organization, I started a campaign about 3 years ago, and Dr. Jenny Leist manages it for us now. It's called Crank It Up. And turn the crank was Dr. Troxell's call sign. So he'd sign something off. He'd tell you, go turn the crank now. And that was his way of saying get to work. Crank It Up has been going to most of the major chiropractic colleges in the U.S. We've done a few overseas. I'm going to Malaysia here in a little bit with Dr. Pam. Just got back from Spain at the end of last year. So look for Crank It Up. It's at Crank It Ups at your schools. And if you don't have one, email me and we'll get one set up. And we'll bring a doctor or 2 to you, and we keep the cost real low so that we're not trying to gouge students. You're going to spend a lot of money just getting through chiropractic school. We want you to get out and be good chiropractors. That is our effort. And the vehicle you do that with is through the Gonstead system. Herb Wood has a seminar series that I endorse. He's a wonderful man. He's a mentor of mine. He's got a wonderful chiropractic seminar. The Gonstead Seminar of Chiropractic does a great job. The Gonstead Clinical Studies Society has wonderful resources, and we've got some student rates for our directory and the different things that we put out there, and I can get you in contact with those folks. Gonstead.com is the website for that, and you can reach out to Jeannie Taylor or Michelle Holman. And then lastly is, to your point, get together with your colleagues in school. The clubs, if you come to Palmer, you can come be involved with us at the intern program. We just had one intern, a new intern come on. She passed our test. We have a pretty aggressive study system, and then it's a 2-trimester prep period to become an intern, and then they sit a written and a practical exam. And I say that because other clubs have similar processes. It's not to be intimidating. The whole idea is to get you thinking like a chiropractor, because so many people grew up in a medical model solely. And so we have to get your mind thinking about health in a different way. And that's what those things are for. That's what the schools are doing. They're trying to get you guys to think differently. It's not to, beat exam after exam on you. And once you get through that in my program, we make you turn around and teach it. And that's where the rubber really meets the road. And as an intern, then they spend time in my office. So they'll be in the office and they'll observe me adjusting. I can't tell you the benefit I had being in T's back pocket, watching him do pelvic bench, standing over his shoulder, running that scope, watching him palpate, go look at the x-ray, make a decision and make a specific adjustment. And it was methodical. It was reproducible. Anybody can do it. And then I would go back and I would do a history and I would scope a new patient for T and I'd put the BBs on there. And then I get to go watch and see what he adjusted. And sometimes I was in the same area and sometimes I was way off in left space. But that experience, if you can find that where you're at, is invaluable. Get in some good quality doctors' offices and start observing. So that's the process that I would encourage you to. And as you do that, you're going to make some real lifelong friends in your chiropractic family, because you're going to study together. You're going to go through those hardships together. You're going to want to scream at the same time when you got 4 exams, but you know you got a workshop on knee chest that you just can't miss. It's just how it goes, you know. And then one day you'll wake up and go, I'm graduating tomorrow. And whatever you do, you don't want to be as good as you're ever going to be when you cross the stage. That's a huge error in our profession, because our schools, they're giving you the tools to be able to go practice, but they're not giving you everything you need to be successful in practice. They can't. It's impossible. That has got to be a lifelong commitment from you as a chiropractor. And I can't emphasize that enough. I started it with, it's hard work. It is, and it remains hard work. But anything worthwhile in life is that way. And if you enjoy what you do, as Dr. O'Hara always tells me, you never work a day in your life. So, you know, it's really a wonderful profession. And that'd be the advice I get. Get your teams together and get to work, because the graduation day will come fast and you don't want to be crossing that stage scratching your head. And if you dive into the Gonstead work, you won't. You'll cross that stage, and you may not be the best adjuster on the planet. That's okay. That takes time. That takes a lot of time. But you will have a roadmap of how to check and figure out how to start helping people. And once you do that, chiropractic will do the rest.
Thank you so much for your time today, Doc. I really appreciate you sharing as much insight as you can with the time given. And we'll be sure to at least build this bridge between you and any prospective student coming into chiropractic school, so that they could at least be aware of truly the authentic message of what Gonstead is all about, and how you can go about becoming a Gonstead chiropractor or studying the Gonstead methodology. So thank you so much.
Thanks for what you're doing. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.